You turn it into
Brought him right back.
you turn it into Abbott and Costello.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. My name is Norma. I'm the chair of the Pinsky Favorite Poem Project for the front of the Chautauqua Writers Center. And it's wonderful that you all take the weather and take a join in today. This is our 16th consecutive annual Pinsky Favorite Poem Project. So we've proven that pandemics and other things cannot interrupt our important work. As poet laureate in 1997, Robert Pinsky founded the Favorite Poem Project, through which thousands of Americans of varying backgrounds, ages, and from every state now share their favorite poems with the public. Contrary to the perception that poetry was really just for the academics, for the elite, for the educated, Robert Pinsky believes that poetry has a place in all of our lives, a strong presence in American culture. His project sought to provide an outlet for the hunger for poetry, and today, as we're all here, sitting at the table, eating from that wonderful meal. Georgia Cord is a longtime supporter of the Writers Center. She brought the Pinsky Favorite Poem Project to Chautauqua with Robert Pinsky in 2009, and we thank you for joining us. Anis Mujami is our faculty poet in residence this week, and he's going to start off our program with some thoughts about the importance of poetry, and he will then share his favorite poem with us. Anis is the current poet laureate of Oregon. His work has appeared on HBO, NPR, and in the pages of the New York Times. Both a writer and an artist, Anis is the author of 6 books of poetry, The Opera Libretto for Sanctuaries, and he has a picture book forthcoming in 2025. His most recent book is The Tigers, They Let Me. Originally from New Orleans, Anis lives in Portland, Oregon. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for letting me join y'all poem this afternoon, for joining one another to hear poem. I'm not going to speak too long. Just wanted to quickly take the opportunity to share why I love poetry in general. Because it's one of these things that, to me, poetry is like trees or breathing, where it feels almost like this thing of irrelevance, knowing that it's just ever present. But should it suddenly be removed from our lives, even if we don't interact with it regularly, think about the ways we're interacting with it, we wouldn't have much living going on. And you know, when we take a moment throughout our life to step toward this thing, you know, I think there's many tools in our lives that are there for us to make sense of who we are as people, make sense of how we fit into the world around us. And one of those happens to be poetry, a way that it allows us to make sense of unseen shapes sitting inside of us. We might not know what they contain, what they are trying to say to us, until we take them out and put them on a piece of paper and see how they might arrange themselves, or simply set them free in the way in which we move them close, or in the ways in which that poetry ends up being a bridge between all of us. You know, I think like that's what events like this really speak towards. You know, what are the ways in which that any poem being put down on paper is really just an opportunity to kind of see what are the ways that all of us are echoing inside of somebody else. And so I wanted to share with y'all. It was difficult to choose between. There's a Robert Hayden poem I love so very much, but I'm not going to read that. But y'all should go read it if you haven't read it. It's called Those Winter Sundays. The poem that I'm going to read over and go. is by the poet Matthew Oldman, and it's called Mountain Dew Commercial, disguised as a love. So here's what I've got, the reasons why our marriage might work. Because you wear pink, but write poems about bullets and gravestones. Because you yell at your keys when you lose them, and laugh loudly at your own jokes. Because you can hold a pistol, gut a pig. Because you memorize songs, even commercials from 30 years back, and sing them when vacuuming. You have soft hands. Because when we moved, the contents of what you packed were written inside the boxes. Because you think swans are overrated and kind of stupid. Because you drove me to the train station, you drove me to Minneapolis, you drove me to Providence. Because you underline everything you read and circle the things you think are important and put stars next to the things you think I should think are important and write notes in the margin about all the people you're mad at and my name almost never appears. Because you made that pork recipe you found in the Frida Kahlo cookbook. Because when you read that essay about Rilke, you underlined the whole thing, except the part where Rilke says, love means to deny the self to be inflamed. Because when the lights are off, the curtains drawn, and an additional sheet is nailed over the window, you still believe someone outside can see you. And one day, 5 summers ago, when you couldn't put gas in your car, when your fridge was so empty, not even leftovers or condiments, there was a single 20-ounce bottle of Mountain Dew, which you paid for with your last damn dime, because you once overheard me say that I liked it. Thank you.
In honor of Chautauqua's sesquicentennial, what happened that birthday this season, we've tried to incorporate a little bit of history into our program. Our instigator of this project, Georgia Court, will start the readings, along with various other long-term members of the literary arts, taking us through to the modern present time. Parallel to that, we have some poems from the era of the founding of Chautauqua being shared. And again, this will lead us through to current day poets and poems. So I hope this gives us a little birthday celebration kind of Chautauqua style. Our readers today, the way it works is our readers are invited up and they will tell us briefly why the poem they are going to read spoke to them, and then they will read it. Georgia Court is our first reader. As I said previously, Georgia is a longtime supporter of all things literary in Chicago. And aside from that, she has founded the annual Poetry Life Festival, which I assume is like the Pinsky project in Sarasota. Includes the Pinsky project, where she currently owns a bookstore. Here she has hosted many terrific poets, including Robert. It's a little disconcerting to be considered part of history, though. No worries. And in the discussion of Robert Pinsky earlier, it made it sound as if he's no longer with us. But he is. He's a friend. He's alive. He's well, and he's writing poetry in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He has a new book out recently, so he's very much active. So don't forget about him. I'm going to read a poem by him today, in fact, in honor of the Pinsky project. And I picked this poem because it reminds me so much of it's about walking through a small town, kind of late in the afternoon. And it reminds me of towns in which I've lived, like Cincinnati, Ohio, where I lived for a long time. And it reminds me to a certain extent of Chautauqua. So the lovely feeling about walking through the town and you're wondering what's going on behind those windows. And it's the third part of a 6-part poem by Pinsky, and it's called, the whole poem is called City Elegies. Now the pale honey of a kitchen light burns at an upstairs window, the sash across. Milky daylight moon, sky scored by walnuts. Houses in rows, patient as cows. Dormers and gables of an immigrant street in a small city, the wind-worn afternoon shading into night. Hundreds of times before, I have felt it in some district of shingle and downspout at just this hour. The renter walking home from the bus, carrying a crisp bag. Maybe a store visible at the corner, neon at dusk, macaroni mist fogging the glass. Unmilked, seductive as music, brief as dusk itself, the forgotten mirror, brushed for dozens of years by the same gray light, the same shadows of soffit and gleam. A wreath of old snow blowing along the sidewalk. If I am hollow, or if I am heavy with longing, the same. The ponderous houses of siding, fur framing, horsehair plaster, fired bricks in a certain light, changing nothing, but touching those separate hours of the past, and now, at this one time of day, touching this one, last spokes of light, silvering the attic dust. One of those cases, rumors of Robert Pinsky tomorrow. Exaggerating. Bill Bates is our next reader. He lives in Pittsburgh and is a longtime seasonal Chicago. Bill loves the written word, often committing long poems and poetic passages to memory. He also participates in provocative short story discussions, especially on Saturday mornings throughout the season. Thank you.
Good evening, you. Thank you, Norma, for all your work. Casey in the Back, Prince Mayor, lived in 1888. Chautauqua was 14 years old then. Story of an American hero, till it wasn't. The outlook wasn't brilliant for the Mudville nine that day. The score stood 4-2 with one inning for play. So when Burroughs died at first, Cooney did the same. A death-like silence fell upon the patrons of the game. The straggling few got up to go, leaving the other rest. Hope that springs eternal in the breath. They thought if only Casey could get a whack at that, they'd put up even money now with Casey in the back. But Flynn preceded Casey, likewise so did Blake. The former was a Lulu and the latter was a Kate. The one that sickened multitude, grim melancholy staff, seemed like a chance of Casey back. But Flynn went right a single, but when them all in the much despised Blake, he tore the cover off the wall. When the dust had settled and they saw what had occurred, there was Blake safe on second. Flynn, like a third. Then from the glad multitude went up a joyous yell, rattled in the mountaintops, struck upon the dell. It hit upon the hillside and rebounded in the flat. Casey mighty, Casey, back. There was ease in Casey's manner as he stepped into his place. Pride in Casey's bearing and a smile on Casey's face. When responding to the cheers, he lightly doffed his hat. No stranger in that crowd could doubt was Casey in the back. 10,000 eyes were on him as he rubbed his hands with dirt. 5,000 tugs applauded as he wiped him on his shirt. While the writhing pitcher ground the ball into his hip, defiance gleamed in Casey's eye, a sneer from Casey's lip. Looks by the sturdy batsman the ball and he is fed. Casey stood watching it and hockey ran through there. They ain't my style, said Casey. Strike one, the umpire said. Kill him! Kill the umpire, shouted someone from the stand. Likely they have killed him, have not Casey. With a smile of Christian charity, great cases that he's shown, he still derides the tool. He begged the game go on. He signaled to the pitcher once more the steroid flew. Casey still ignored it, and the umpire said, strike two! Fraud! Cried the maddened thousands, and the echo answered, fraud. One sad look from Casey, the audience was fraud. They saw his face grow stern and cold, they saw his muscles strain. And then Casey wouldn't let that ball go by again. The smile was gone from Casey's face. His teeth are clenched in hate, his tongue with full violence back upon the plate. Now the pitcher holds the ball, and now he lets it go, and now the air is shattered. Of course, Casey's glove. Somewhere in this favored land, the sun is shining bright. Somewhere men are happy, somewhere hearts are light. And somewhere bands are playing, somewhere children shine. There is no joy in life. I think Casey has struck out. Oh!
Bill. Stephen Stott first came to the grounds in 1990 as the next day's guest artist of the Chautauqua Theatre Company. He and his wife Kendall have been coming back ever since the venture. They now live here year-round, and Kendall is the current president of the Chautauqua Theatre Company. Stephen was a professional actor.
Friends of Chautauqua.
Friends of Chautauqua Theatre Company, sorry.
Okay.
Stephen was a professional actor and director for 30 years and spent his final 19 working years as a high school theater teacher. Lucky student. He's still avidly involved in all things theater.
Yes.
I chose Dover Beach, published in 1867, so it fit the question you're trying to answer. And the reason I chose this poem was I had a very good junior high school English teacher who had us read this play. It was all British literature, and she made it come to life for me in ways that I couldn't believe would. A kid my skinny self was just such an idiot back then. But it really lit me up. And it lit me up so much that I wanted to read it for you today. The sea is calm tonight. The tide is full. The moon lies fair upon the straits. On the French coast, the light gleams and is gone. The cliffs of England stand glimmering and vast out in the tranquil bay. Come to the window, sweet is the night air. Only from the long line of spray where the sea meets the moon-blanched land. Listen, you hear the grating roar of pebbles which the waves draw back and fling at their return up the high strand. Begin and cease, and then again begin with tremulous cadence slow, and bring the eternal note of sadness in. Sophocles long ago heard it on the Aegean, and it brought into his mind the turbid ebb and flow of human misery. We find also in the sound a thought, hearing it by this distant northern sea. The sea of faith was once too at the full, and round earth's shore lay like the folds of a bright girdle furled. But now I only hear its melancholy, long withdrawn. the vast edges drear, in naked shingles of the world. Ah, love, let us be true to one another, for the world which seems to lie before us like a land of dreams, so various, so beautiful, so new, hath really neither joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help for pain. And we are here, as on a darkling flame, swept with confused alarms of struggle and flight, where ignorant armies flash by night.
I hope you continue some effect she's having. Our next reader is Wally Reed. He's a Sun Devil from Arizona State University, where he graduated as an English major. He then went on to other things, but in his retirement discovered Chautauqua and has been a seasonal attendee since 2008. Wally has participated in many literary art workshops, short story discussions, and writing projects. He encourages all of you to become involved in all things offered by the Friends of the Chautauqua Writers. He's a lucky boy that currently lives with me on the Gold Coast in Australia. Wally.
Well done, Sue. And well done, Bill. I wanted to pick a poem that of the era, and the song of Hiawatha by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow was written in 1855, and I'm sure that everyone that was here in 1874 and all through the 70s were familiar with that poem, because Longfellow was the most popular poet in America at that time. And probably this poem was actually, it's a book, a 22-chapter book. And I'm not going to do all 22 chapters. What I'm going to do is a little section that you will all be familiar with. That's one of the reasons I wanted to do it. And by the way, there was a statue, I think bronze statue, installed in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, Hiawatha City, in 1874, the year that Chautauqua was founded. So that's one of the reasons that I wanted to choose it. And another reason is that my mother taught school for 40 years in a little Arizona mining town where I grew up, and with half Hispanic, half English, original English speaking people. And she taught this poem to her third grade class for 40 years. And if you can try to imagine standing outside the door, as I can well remember, and these 8-year-old kids in unison reciting this section of the poem, it's a good memory for me. A Hispanic woman once said to me on the street in that little town later on that my mother taught her and her daughter and her mother, and probably another generation too. She's taught all these generations. And this woman said, you know, your mother taught us Hiawatha. It was the only poem we ever learned in school. So I'm only going to read the small part that you'll be familiar with. From the third chapter of the song of Hiawatha. By the shores of Itchigumi, by the shining big sea water, stood the wigwam of Nokomis, daughter of the moon, Nokomis. Dark behind it rose the forest, rose the black and gloomy pine trees, rose the firs with cones upon them. Right before it beat the water, beat the clear and sunny water, beat the shining big sea water.
There, the wrinkle-rolled Nokomis nursed the little Hiawatha, rocked him in his lenten cradle, bedded soft in moss and rushes, safely bound with reindeer sinews. Still his fretful wail by saying, "Hush," the naked bear will hear thee, lulled him into slumber, singing, "Ee-wah-yay, my little owlet. Who is this that lights the wigwam? His great eyes lights the wigwam. Ee-wah-yay, my little owlet." Many things Nokomis taught him of the stars that shine in heaven, showed him Ishkadura, the comet, Ishkadu, with fiery tresses, showed the death dance of the spirits, warriors with their plumes and war clubs, flaring far away to northward in the frosty nights. Showed the broad white road in heaven, pathway of the ghosts, the shadows, running straight across the heavens, crowded with the ghosts, the shadows. At the door, on summer evenings, sat the little Hiawatha, heard the whispering of the pine trees, heard the lapping of the waters, sounds of music, words of wonder. Many wawa, said the pine trees. Madwayashka, said the water. Madwayashka, said the water.
Thank you, William. Our next reader is Kayla. She too is a long-term Chautauquan who's been teaching classes on Jungian psychology, myths, and fairy tales, and Emily Dickinson for 34 years at Chautauqua. She continues as a teacher, a student, and a supporter of many literary pursuits. Thank you. One I've selected is called The Catskill Eagle. It's by Herman Melville. And if you have read that wonderful short book, Moby Dick lately, you have read the poem as part of that book. Now, can you just imagine with me for a moment the Catskill Mountains? And you can imagine the mountains. Now imagine if you were an eagle in the Catskill Mountains. And sometimes you could fly way up high over the land. But sometimes you might fly down low. But if you were an eagle in the Catskill Mountains, how low could you go? Not so low. And you could soar out of the mountains again. Even you could go down, but you wouldn't go down all that far into. Now, can you imagine for a moment the Catskill Eagle as a metaphor for your soul? For your soul. Oh, you will. Can you imagine your soul soaring in the Catskill? And there is a Catskill Eagle in some place that can like dive down into the blackest gorge and soar out them again and become invisible in the sunniest spaces. And there's a Catskill Eagle in some souls that can alike dive down in the blackest gorges and soar out of them again and become invisible in some spaces. And even if he forever flies within the gorge, and even if he forever flies within the gorge, that gorge is in the mountains. So that even in his lowest swoop, the mountain eagle is still higher than the other birds above the tree, even though they soar. Heather Jessel is a fellow Aussie. I'm from Australia. Who currently lives in Dallas. You might know that she talks a bit funny too. For the last 10 years, she's been coming to Chautauqua for the whole 9-week season, where she teaches 2 art classes each week in the special studies program. She enjoys writing, but as yet she hasn't mustered the courage to tackle poetry. But we're hoping that'll change after today.
Thank you, Norma. Hi, everyone. So I don't know if this is deliberate, but we're going to follow Kay's verbal animal metaphor, to protect an eagle, with a metaphor that uses fox. Because I'm going to read The Thought Fox by Ted Hughes. I first came across this poem, I think in my teens, as I can remember, late teens. And I was just impressed by the idea of the emergence of a thought being described as though it were a fox emerging from thickets of trees on a dark, snowy night. Ted Hughes wrote this as a result of having writer's block, and then a fox metaphor coming to him in a dream. He wrote it in 1957. I actually only just discovered, maybe I knew it once, but I had long forgotten it. And it turns out that it was 57 is the year that I was born, so I was meant to read this poem. The Thought Fox. I imagine this midnight moment forest. Something else is alive beside the clock's loneliness and this blank page where my fingers move. Through the window, I see no star. Something more near, though deeper within darkness, is entering the loneliness. Cold, delicately as the dark snow, a fox's nose touches twig, leaf. 2 eyes serve a movement of now, and again now, and now, and now. Set neat prints into the snow between trees, and warily a lame shadow lags by stump and in hollow of a body that is bold to come. To come across clearing, an eye, the widening, deepening greenness, brilliantly, concentratedly, coming about its own business. Till, with a sudden, sharp, hot stink of fog, it enters the dark hole of the head. The window is starless still. The clock ticks. The page is printed.
Thank you, Heather. Our next reader is Brandon Sublet. He is the lead of Chautauqua, Play Chautauqua. For those of you who have young children or young grandchildren, you've seen him bouncing around in Vesta Plaza. This is his 3rd year working at Chautauqua. He is 4. Brandon is the father of 3. Oh, good. I wasn't sure if that was wrong. And he tells me his time is working in Play Chautauqua has brought him out of his shell and helped him grow his love of poetry and the arts. Pinsky will be alive.
The book I'm reading from is Things We Don't Talk About, and it's got Don't Talk About. What stuck out to me about this is it's a collection of writings, words, and poetry about mental health, anxiety, depression, and it's something that I've struggled with. Not a lot of people know, but the poem I'm reading is based on finding your own way. And it starts, I'm stuck in a prison of hopelessness. I try to find my way out. But I'm distracted by the blindness, the hurt, and the pain takes over my soul. I'm slowly sinking in a deep, dark hole. I take 2 steps forward to only take 3 steps back. It's a never-ending cycle, running from the light and back. Can't seem to find the right way, to realize there is no right way. But in the end, only my way. And sitting here looking at this, there's a second part over on this side that I didn't include and I wasn't going to read, but in this moment, hearing everybody else kind of speak and go through everything, I'm not sure what I'm most scared of, the strangers outside the door or the strangers hiding in me. Thank you.
Well done, Brendan. Fred Lowe has been coming to Chautauqua since 1998. I don't know. 1998, and he joined the board of what is now Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center in 2009. Fred is a teacher and award-winning director of community plays and a published poet. He's been a long-time friend of Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center, and he's been a wonderful supporter to me during my pet project. Thank you.
I don't know what your experiences have been at high school reunions. My experience was with the first couple, the 5th and the 10th. There was a lot of showboating going on. People trying to impress each other with what college they went to, what career they had started, what car they were driving, what partner they had acquired. Something change or changes, at least in my experience over the years. So I'd like to read Linda Pascal's poem about a 25th high school reunion. We come to hear the endings of all the stories in our anthology of false starts. How a girl who seemed as hard as nails was hammered into shape. How the athletes ran out of races. How under the skin our fall rise to the surface like rocks in the bed of a drying stream. Look, we have all turned into ourselves.
Speaking of Friends of the Chautauqua Writers Center, our next reader is Claire Silverstein. She's been coming to Chautauqua with her family since 1990. She adds to our birthday celebration that she was a former program director at the Chautauqua Writers Center for 12 years. So she's a part of our history. Claire is the author of 6 books, fiction, poems. She's a wonderful chef and has some great cooking. With a collection of poems forthcoming from Finishing Line Press in 2025. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you. It's great to be part of the Favorite Poem Project. Again, I was at the very first one. So speaking about history, there we have some. Also thinking about history, Pablo Neruda was a 20th century poet. I know we're moving to time with the poets repeating, so he is part of that century. And I find that I return to this poem again and again because I think it so beautifully captures what happens after someone passes away. What is their essence? It's called I Will Return. And the translation is by someone who runs White Pine Press, Dennis Moby, and that is based on I Will Return. Some other time, man or woman, traveler, later, when I'm not alive, look here, look for me, between stone and ocean, in the light storming through the phone. Look here, look for me, for here I will return, without saying a thing, without voice, without mouth, pure. Here I will return to be the churning of the water, of an unbroken heart. Here I will be discovered and lost. Here I will, perhaps, be stone and silent. Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Fiona Martinez is a poet and a community organizer from Boise, Idaho. She is an incoming grad student of the Creative Writing MFA program at UC San Diego. She explores free verse and hybrid work, including bilingual writing and visual poetry autobiography, which are featured in her manuscript called The Northern Flicker. Fiona is one of, I think, the new poet styles who believe in creativity as an act of resistance, using writing as a tool of activism, while organizing in communities for local and global social justice. Her writing centers nature, home, and water, and the persistent entanglement of violence and tenderness. As a little aside, she's also the person who organizes your thoughts about Poem of the Week and writes up the Poem of the Week that is available to you in the weekend edition of the Chautauqua Daily. Doing a great job of that. Thank you.
I'm going to read Skinny Dipping by Ocean Vaughn, who's probably my favorite poet at the moment. Yeah, the first time I read his book, Time of the Mother, I was astounded. But one of the things I like the most is the way he uses jamming, which for non-poets is just like the way the lines break, and like you're breaking, you don't have a full sentence on a line. So this poem, you see it on the page, is cascading down, and it's called Skinny Dipping, but it feels like life at the edge of the cliff. And what that means. Some boys have ghosted from this high, but I want to go down on you anyway, to weep from the bridge I've made of my wrong. Look, they lied to us. No one here was ever ugly. Look, if you see me, then I prayed correctly. I left from the verb, taking off my best shirt, this rag and rage until it's too late in summer's teeth. Like the blade of a guillotine, I won't pick a side. My name a past tense where I left my hand for good. Oh, it should be enough to live and die alone with music on your tongue. To jump from anywhere and make it home. To be warm and full of nothing. Oh, I kept my hope band on the entire time to distract you from my flat ass. Did it work? Oh, my people, my people. I thought the fall would kill me, but it only made me real.
Thank you, Fiona. Our next reader is Paul Schuler. He organizes the Chautauqua Softball League, plays the main game of tennis, and facilitates the short story discussion, both as a week-long course during the season and on Saturday mornings each week.
I forgot how good Norma was at this antique. So, my introduction to the poem
which is called Introduction to Poetry by Billy Collins, who has been at Chautauqua a whole bunch. I teach English, mostly teach prose, reading prose, writing prose, occasionally teach poetry. I don't think I'm very good at teaching poetry, but I do it sometimes. The poem is 5 stanzas long. Oh, I'm sorry, it's 7 stanzas long. The first 5 stanzas, as I read it, is a teacher saying what he or she wants his or her students to do when they read poetry. And the last 2 stanzas are what they in fact do. And I think probably they do what they do because English teachers have messed them up. Well, who knows? Anyway, my friend Bill Curran is out there. He's my friend and my softball teammate. The 5th stanza talks about water skiing. And what I picture is Bill in the early morning water skiing on this lake here. So I hope as I read this, the images get you to picture things like that. And so it's Introduction to Poetry by Billy Collins. 1988 is when he wrote it, when this institution was 114 years old. I asked them to take a poem and hold it up to the light, like a colored slide, or press an ear against its time. I say drop a mouse into a poem and watch him probe his way out. Or walk inside the poem's room and feel the walls for a light switch. I want them to water ski across the surface of a poem, waving at the author's name on the shore. But all they want to do is tie the poem to a chair with a rope and torture a confession out of it. They begin beating it with a hose to find out what it really means.
Our next reader is Stephanie Hunt. She served Chautauqua Institution as the CLSC Octagon Manager for 8 years. But then somebody in their wisdom recognized her skills and enthusiasm. And this year she's serving now as the esteemed manager and advocate of the Literary Arts of Chautauqua. She also is a PhD candidate in American Studies at the University of Buffalo, an adjunct instructor in the Department of English at SUNY Fredonia. Thank you, Steph.
Be able to walk up to the microphone with someone at my height. So thank you, Norma, for that small gift and for the gift of the proper Pinsky favorite poem project. So I'll be reading Dead Stars by Ada Limon, partially because the first time Norma asked me to do this last year, I submitted a poem by Ross Gay, and I'm one of those poetry lovers that love the long poems. Like, give me the 6-pager, the 10-pager, the whole book, and I'm like, yeah. And Norma goes, I'm sorry. If you want to do this, you have to pick a shorter poem. And I was like, okay. So I scoured for a while, and I found Ada Limon has always been a favorite of mine, poet laureate at this time for the 2nd year in a row. And I stumbled back across this poem after a few years of not having a chance to read it. And I found in it what has always drawn me to literature, and that's the connection to others as humans. For me, reading in literature is really about relationships. And I think this poem speaks to that really well. So, without further ado, Dead Stars. Out here, there's a bowing that even the trees are doing. Winter's icy hand at the back of us all. Black bark, split yellow leaves, a kind of stillness that feels so mute. It's almost in another year.
I'm at a hearth of spiders. I am a hearth of spiders these days, a nest of trying. We point out the stars that make out Orion as we take out the trash, the rolling containers, the song of suburban thunder. It's almost romantic as we adjust the waxy blue recycling bin until you say, man, we should really learn some new constellations. And it's true. We keep forgetting about Antilla, Centaurus, Draco, Lacerta, Hydra, Lyra, Lynx. But mostly, we're forgetting we're dead stars too. My mouth is full of dust, and I wish to reclaim the rising, to lean in the spotlight, the streetlights, with you, toward what's larger within us, toward how we were born. Look, we're not unspectacular things. We've come this far, survived this much. What would happen if we decided to survive more, to love harder? What if we stood up with our synapses and flesh and said no? No to the rising tides, stood for the many new mouths of the sea, of the land. What would happen if we used our bodies to bargain for the safety of others, for Earth? If we declared a clean night, if we stopped being terrified, if we launched our demands into the sky, made ourselves so big people could point to us with the arrows they make in their minds, rolling their trash bins out after all of this.
Thank you, Stephanie. And as she mentioned, that poem, Dead Stars, brings us to the current poet laureate of the U.S. And amazingly enough, she was reinstated as poet laureate for a second term, which is a historic thing. And she says of poetry that it has the possibility to show us rage, to connect without fear, to celebrate joy, and to make room for the whole spectrum of human emotions. Great poetry is a place where we can come to get the strength to heal, to become whole again, and then recommit to the world. Our next reader is J.C. Lane. She is a spoken word poet who lives and writes in San Diego. Fortunately for us, she was here in Chautauqua this week, spending time in England. She's releasing her first poetry book later this year. Thank you very much.
Hello. This is such a treat. I came across this event 4 minutes before the deadline to submit, and I was like, so yay, I'm happy to be here. So my name is J.C. Lane. I am a mental health advocate and a big believer in women and humans in general, just reclaiming their power. That's what most of my work is about. If you'd like to support my work or connect with me, you can follow me on Instagram at JC Lane Official. So the piece that I'm performing today is from a fellow spoken word poet, internationally acclaimed slam poet and author, Rudy Francisco. Has anybody here heard of Rudy Francisco? Okay, a few of you. Oh my gosh, he will blow your mind. He's absolutely incredible, and I am so honored to get to share with you one of my favorite pieces of his. So this piece is called Orville. And this is from his newest collection, Excuse Me As I Kiss the Sky. This piece to me is about believing in the impossible. It's for the dreamers and the visionaries. It's like a battle cry to remind us of humans' capacity against all odds and our ability to create and to fly. So here we go. A letter from Orville to Wilbur the evening before their first flight. The Wright brothers, Orville and Wilbur, are known as the first engineers to successfully design, build, and operate an aircraft. Brother, last week I overheard a joke. What do you call two men who think they can fly? A funeral. To be honest, I didn't think it was funny either. The whole town has become an ocean of pointed fingers. People I once called friends are now just a tidal wave of unsolicited advice. They're trying to rinse out the color from our dreams. Yesterday, a lady from church pulled me aside and said, if God wanted us in the sky, he would have given us wings. And I replied, isn't that what imagination is? The act of actually going somewhere that others can only think of. Brother, sometimes people who have never even tried to run a mile will tell you that a marathon is too far. Some people will try to talk you out of jumping into the water simply because they have always been too scared to learn how to swim. Fear is when the brain digs out all space from the body and then calls it survival. Fear is when we turn up the volume on everything that might go wrong and then allow it to speak louder than our courage. But for those who do not worship at the altar of panic, for those who will not sacrifice their ambitions to a demigod of worst-case scenarios, for those who do not give up, failure is just a short story they tell before they talk about success. I know this process has been difficult. The miscalculations, the hours we've put in, the days we spend away from our families. But every time I walk outside, I can feel the ground getting nervous, like it knows it cannot keep us here much longer because we are destined for a higher calling. I hear them say it's impossible, but I say everything is until it's not. They call us stupid. I say stupid and brave are just two sides of the same coin. The only difference is whether you guess correctly before the penny hits the floor. Tomorrow, we will call gravity a liar. We will kiss God on the face. Tomorrow, brother, I will look you in the eyes and I will say, I told you the wind would feel different up here. What they think does not matter. When we are in the clouds, we won't even be able to see them. Brother, I have a joke. What do you call the first two men in the world who figure out how to fly? Legends. Thank you.
But the theme of Chautauqua's week this week is wonder and awe. And I think we started the week off well, sitting together in a wonderful space, filled with the awe of old poems, new readers, and old readers. So the sad news is that's what we have for you today. The good news is we hope that you've enjoyed the readings. You'll walk away thinking about including a little more poetry in your life, a lot more poetry in your life. Come and read and listen with us again next year. Thank you.